the koan we chose is when the tree withers and the leaves fall, what's happening? And the teacher says, the golden wind is revealing itself. The golden wind is appearing, as it does. And there are different ways, we can just see this as the ceremonial seasons of life, this koan and the blowing of the wind, that blows through us all the time. But it's also true that there's something that happens in meditation where a lot of the things we're wanting and hoping for and striving for and think are super important, they fall off, the golden wind blows them away. So meditation is itself the wind that helps strip things down. There's nothing really harsh about that. It's just that the things we thought were important, actually, what were they again? Then they're not, and there's a marvelous quality of it. So meditation, autumn and meditation is a time of the interior life, and a time of the great questions, really. Tony Hoagland, said, autumn, the philosophical season. It's the kind of thing he would say. And like putting a slight distance from it. But actually we don't have any distance in autumn, and the spaciousness in the sky takes us, or the closing into the clouds and the rain and the frosts. And so there's a time of naturally going inside, and along with whatever sense of loss of the exterior, loss of summer, loss of laughter in the sunlit evenings, loss of children running around, there's also a kind of appearance of beauty and clarity and the discovery of what are we doing here in this life? In a certain sense, in autumn, we ask that question because we're not running around doing things so much, Or at least I'm not. I always find that I can't ever get very much done. I enjoy summer, but can't ever get very much done. But in autumn, I naturally start getting things done. So I guess I like that. And so that stripping off process is kind of really interesting. I found a great poem about the stripping off process. This is by Yusuf Komunyakaa, who's kind of a tremendous poet. It's called Ode to the Maggot. And brother of the blowfly and Godhead, you work magic over battlefields in slabs of bad pork and flophouses. Yes, you go to the root of all things. You are sound and mathematical. This is the maggot. You are sound and mathematical. Jesus Christ, you're merciless with the truth. You're merciless, ontological and lustrous. You cast spells on beggars and kings behind the stone door of Caesar's tomb, or a split trench in a field of ragweed. No decree or creed can outlaw you, and you take every living thing apart, little master of earth. No one gets to heaven without going through you first. So, somebody who had seen battlefields. And I wanted to say, and also autumn has this other quality of wonder in it. The cold wind turns to face winter and says, I'm not sure about this. So that's sort of quality. I'm not sure I'm totally for this, the loneliness thereof. And I had a very wintry time in my life. When I was, about 20, I had I think a kind of one of those ideas that seems in retrospect, you're not sure if it's bad or not, but at the time it seemed like a bad idea of going to, I went down into, I lived in Tasmania, and I went to the west coast where there was a mining town called the Mount Lyell Mining and Railway Company, which wasn't in a town called Queenstown. And it's not a mine anymore now. And the sulfur dioxide from the smelters had burned everything away. So there was a sort of perennial winter there in a way. But also the rocks were very beautiful, pink granite and golden sulfur and the tailings and things. So it was interesting. And I mean, it wasn't, I don't know if it's interesting, but it was one of those sort of doomed places that it was right on the west coast of Tasmania, which is the hard side of Tasmania to be on, because all the rain and the blowing from off the Great Southern Ocean comes tearing through. And so and so I was trying to get into the mines, but they put me in the smelters because they were desperate for people in the smelters, and they paid the smelter people a lot less. So I'd be in there and be swinging a sledgehammer to, it was very gothic with flames coming out, and the big open industrial doors open into the smelter and snow blowing through, but it was so hot inside you didn't know, you just wore t-shirts. And it was one of those odd things I was doing. And but to survive it, I was sort of learning poetry, and I was reciting poetry to myself as I would swing a sledgehammer or whatever else I was doing, and driving a forklift or something like that. And one of the poems, it was an autumn poem, and at the time I didn't know about. I just thought it was beautiful, but I didn't realize I was probably talking about my own feeling of autumn. This is Wallace Stevens' late hymn from the Mer Mountain. Unsnack your snood, Madonna, for the stars are shining on all the brows of Neversink, on all brows of Neversink. Already the green bird of summer has flown. Already the green bird of summer has flown away. That line always catches me, I always stop on flown. Already the green bird of summer has flown away. The night flies acknowledge these planets, predestined to this night, this noise in the place of summer. Tomorrow will look like today, will appear like it, but it will be an appearance, a shape left behind with like wings spreading out, brightly empowered with like colors, swarmingly but not quite molten, not quite the fluid thing, a little changed by tips of artifice, changed by the glints of sound from the grass. These are not the early constellations from which came the first illustrious intimations, uncertain love, the knowledge of being, sense without sense of time. Take the diamonds from your hair and lay them down. The deer grass is thin, the timothy is brown, the shadow of an external world comes near. I think I liked that poem because it was really hard to understand. And I'm swinging a hammer in a sledgehammer in this sort of smelter, and the people there were sort of I don't know, when the local people were just sort of like mining town people who whose main interest was fighting and fighting over girls, and so fights would break out on the shop floor, on the smelter floor, and everybody would tactfully stand aside while the people worked it out. Big vats of copper slopping, untended because of the fighting going on, untended, slopping molten copper onto the floor, just in small splashes. And then sort of people who were like clearly refugees after the war, who came in with huge shrapnel scars. If you'd see them in the showers, they had big old guys, shrapnel scars, kind of crazy. And wasn't tactful to ask them whose side they fought on during the war. Be careful talking to them. And then there were a few people like me who would just sort of wander through, who were refugees in a different way. But I found it consoling, a late hymn, unsnack your snuda, Madonna, for the stars are shining on all the brows that never sink. Little pieces of starlight in that. Now I want to read you this is kind of I think this is, I'm not sure if this is a winter poem or an autumn poem, but I want to read you, this poem's just fun. And it's Pablo Neruda, Ode to My Socks. Maru Mori brought me a pair of socks which she knitted with her own sheep herder hands. 2 socks as soft as a rabbit's. I slipped my feet into them as if they were 2 cases knitted with threads of twilight and the pelt of sheep. Outrageous socks, my feet became 2 fish made of wool, 2 long sharks of ultramarine blue, crossed by 1 golden hare, 2 gigantic blackbirds, 2 cannons. My feet were honoured in this way by these heavenly socks. My feet were honoured in this way by these heavenly socks. They were so beautiful that for the first time my feet seemed to me unacceptable, like 2 decrepit firemen unworthy of that embroidered fire of those luminous socks. Neruda just reaches for any image, or any image comes to him and he doesn't think, is this the right image? No, he just whacks it in the poem. And so it's kind of great. He's like autumn in that way. Whatever happens, happens. 2 decrepit firemen unworthy of all that embroidered fire of those luminous socks. Nevertheless, I resisted the sharp temptation to save them, as schoolboys keep fireflies, as scholars collect sacred documents. I resisted a wild impulse to put them in a golden cage. That's nice, isn't it? Autumn says you have to use things, you can't just hoard them, that they have to be used and worn out and things like that. And each day, put them in a golden cage, and each day give them birdseed and chunks of pink melon. Like explorers in the jungle who hand over the rare green deer to the roasting spit and eat it with remorse, I stretched out my feet and pulled on the magnificent socks and then my shoes. And the moral of my ode is this: beauty is twice beauty, and what is good is doubly good when it's a matter of 2 woolen socks in winter. So thank you, Pablo. And here's a touching kind of thing about the little gestures we do and how, let me just read it. The little gestures we do and how in a way I think that's meditation. Any little moment of kindness or peace or maybe noticing our unkindness or something like that. Any little moment like that lets the light in. And this is someone called Edwin Kay, K-A-Y-E, Before Sleep. If you rub the back of your child at bedtime, his wife will be happy. If you kiss him good night and tuck the blankets at bedtime, his children will love him. If you sing to your child at bedtime, he will have comfort when he dies. Not sure if that's completely true, but there's some truth in it, isn't there? That those little things, like, when a child says, tell me a story, and you say, okay, that's it, right? And okay. So now we're going to, I have more things to say and read, but I think that stripping off, the autumn wind, the stripping off thing is, I suppose, fundamental to meditation. But we don't, the autumn just does that, the golden wind just does that itself, right? And the fact that it's golden, there's some sort of perfection in the stripping off, I think. There's a yellow of the leaves and all that, but and the turning down, and the interiority of things. And then we notice things like, for example, like when I was working in the smelter, I was sort of trying to strip off and get everything off me, everything I grew up with off me, and only later on, and I was reading odd things too. There was a little lending library there that nobody ever went to, and I would go and off hours and sit in the library and read things, and there were like odd, weird books by Yeats, like esoteric books and things, and also there's a book or two about alchemy, like Egyptian alchemy. some I don't know who did the library, but I think some Episcopal or Church of England, as we call it, clergyman had with odd intellectual interests had selected some of the books. So I sat down and was reading about alchemy and things like that. And I didn't at the time realize consciously, but later, I was trying to do this sort of movement from darkness into fire, it's so much a part of the psyche, where you have to, you can't just skim over the surface of the darkness. It comes up to you. It comes up through grief. It comes up through, not thinking well of yourself, or other people not thinking well of you. And then you have to, in a certain way, not surrender to the darkness, but not pretend it's not there either. And of course, in a smelter, then it's all this transmutation to fire. It was a copper smelter, and so this golden light coming out of the metal spilling and things like that. And you're working with this stuff, working with this fire. So it's what we do in our psyches, I think, when we meditate. And so, it's a time, this is a very anxious, confused time in the world, and a lot to say about anxiety, but mainly the best thing is Zazen. mainly when all else fails, there are images and poems, and art and Zazen, kindness. The golden wind revealing itself, and people dying, and that's part of the leaves stripping off too, the golden wind. And you can tell that the golden wind, that incredible impulse we have all the time to push at life, pull at life, grasp at life, try and collect and store life. And the golden wind says you don't need to bother about all that. The Tao does the Tao. If you're worried, that's okay, but don't be worried about being worried. And you won't be able to find out what you're worried about in the end. The golden wind takes that away too. I'd like to hear from Tasmania. You got anything to say, Angela?
Just thinking about that, the music really, and that how that moment of beauty and possibility of the voyageurs doesn't cease to exist because it ended. That those moments go on. That's all really. Just so moving at a time like this. So that's all. Thanks.
Very good. John Joseph's here somewhere. Can you unmute yourself? Do you have anything to say? Somehow I lost you.
Just how much I love this koan, the golden wind, and how much I love that music. The golden music reveals itself, and then the crooked music reveals itself, and then the crooked jig reveals itself. So that's all, I think. Thank you.
Very good. When a friend who was a philosopher took me to meet, said, "There's a guy you got to meet," and so we went and had lunch, and it was Richie Deming, who had he was working as a carpenter he had a band, and it was kind of regionally known Zydeco band, and he had a philosophy degree from the Sorbonne, actually, I think, and but he just hated, and he'd been to Harvard, but he just hated that. He wouldn't talk about that, and he made his living as a carpenter and as a musician, and I thought he overdid he's quite a learned person. He overdid the dislike of his education a bit, but I said, well, here's a way. How do you choose? How do you explain to me what you're looking for in your music? And I was interested in how do people follow the way, which is what I'm always interested in. He said, well, I need a drummer right now, and he had a drummer who'd been with Santana, and he said he was great, but he went on to some larger opportunity, and so he said, I'm looking for a drummer, and he said, if you audition a drummer, a lot of the time they just get distracted and they can't hold the beat, and he said, and so obviously we can't work with someone who can't just hold the steadiness, put the floor underneath the music. But then he said that then you've got to have a drummer who's everybody's so in tune that you're going along. You're just playing along in a regular way, and then suddenly you make a leap, and you're not doing anything regular. You make this leap. And he said, if the drummer's not smart, they'll just keep plodding through in what they were doing. So you've got to get someone who just everybody's tuned in together, and everyone leaps together. And I thought, I don't know how lucky he was at getting that, but it seemed to happen when I listened to his band. And he didn't teach us to do that, but I thought it's a little bit, it's the Tao, isn't it? It's going along, and you've got to really concentrate, and then sometime you've got to jump and do something else. So that came to me. Here's someone from the UK who's been talking to me a little bit. Carlo, is that you? Are you from the UK?
I am. Hello, John.
Hello. Yeah, so you sound like you're from the UK.
I am. I'm a product of 50% Neapolitan and 50% London.
Ah, sounds like a wild combination. Good. Well, welcome. And do you have anything to say about the Golden Wind, or anything to say about anything really in Zen?
Wow. Well, it's very golden here, and it's very windy at the moment. We're in the middle of a very autumnal autumn, and it's lovely to be with you guys. I feel very much like I'm in the middle of an unmaking process, I guess, personally, which seems to chime very nicely with autumn as a season.
That's touching. Well, thank you.
Thank you very
much. We'll hear from you again. Ashley Callum is from North Carolina, and she's not on all the time. So do you want to say anything?
I'm in Georgia.
Yeah.
And I really like what the last person who spoke just said about sort of being in an unmaking process. I don't remember the word he used, but I'm feeling that today, cleaning a lot out. And also really loved that poem. The part about the firefighters inside the socks. I can't remember how it went, but they weren't going to save them. But it was just like a beautiful meeting with the feet, the socks. Thank you.
That's what Zen is, chop wood, carry water, put your socks on, so, yeah. And so I guess, I don't know, I noticed that people are kind of anxious lately, and they're anxious because of the state of the world, because of the Middle East, because somebody they love died, because and some people I know are, anxious about other wars than the Middle East, and to human beings, I read a lot of history, and war is a pretty constant thing. It's one of the strange things to come to terms with in the Dharma is how much violence there is in the universe, and how no matter how much we wish it otherwise, it's a thing. It goes on, and so that in some way, I think, at some stage, having noticed this, and also noticed it inside as well, inside myself and inside everyone I work with, some way, then the Dharma is in a certain way to put that to rest, and not to squash it or lie about it, but and that's why I said we're holding a path for people, we're holding a temple for people to enter. And it's a bit like the tea ceremony, where the tea ceremony was invented for very violent people. Actually, it's very refined, and that's how you can tell it was invented for very violent people. It's very elegant and refined. And the idea was, really during a time of civil war and just afterwards, and so the idea was you could not bring your sword into the tea room. You could not bring into the temples like that. The meditations like that, we don't argue our case in meditation, or if we do, we notice it's not what it's for somehow, that there's something bigger in us and more generous and kinder. So I just want to say that. And I think it's there in all of us, and the anxiety grabs us, or the explaining and reasoning and yelling and things might grab us, but the sorrow. But, here we are, and this is our job, and our job is to hold a vessel for people so they can transform, and do our best job ourselves if we're meditators, Try meditating, it might help. And try that transformation, not believing. Linji said, whatever confronts you, don't believe it. When something appears, shine your light on it. Have confidence in the light that is always at work inside you. So I think with that, musicians, Amaryllis, take us away. Very good. Thank you, John.